Hey everybody, welcome back. Hope you've had a great week. And yeah, this one I'll be just ripping through a whole bunch of stuff today. I am on bingo time, even more than ever. So I forgot to mention on last week's video that my retail manager Andrew is away this weekend next week. So I'm also looking after all of the retail side. So I am pretty buried. It's been a belter of a time. So let's get into it. Yeah, today there's no main theme of today. It is just a whole bunch of low friction fun stuff and updates. So let's get into it. First quick one, sound. I think, the sound on the last couple has not been amazing, and I'm not sure why it changed. But I have, NVIDIA Broadcast, which was a great suggestion by one of the viewers. That was running, then it stopped being there for the microphone, but it was still there for the camera, but I don't know where it went for the mic. It's back, so I've got it back. Hopefully the sound will be better today. And I've also double checked basically what directional setting is on the mic and the gain and all sorts of things. And I've been, done a couple of quick sound checks, and I think it seems better, but please let me know. Right, another thing on my list last week that I forgot, so I'll cover it off this week. Quick shout out to Recycle Bicycle Sales. So I recently sold a mountain bike to move that one on because I really couldn't justify having that one. It was a third one in my fleet. So yeah, I mean, nothing necessarily obviously wrong with selling direct to people, but it can be a bit of a faff, to say the least. Aside from sort of lowball offers and dealing with a whole bunch of sometimes odd questions, and then meeting up with people and having them try to go through and assess your bike. It sure is a whole lot easier to have somebody do all of that dealings for you. And if you're a purchaser, it sure is a lot more peace of mind that rather than, buying something from some rando where you may get caught out for either drivetrain wear or bearings, or if it's a mountain bike, you're maybe not really knowing where the suspension's at, swing arm, pivot bearings, having a professional, having gone over everything, and they can let you know that they've, things have either been fixed up pre-sale, or this is exactly where it is at for the sale, and that's why the price is the price. It's just a whole bunch better, I think, for both the buyer and the seller. So yeah, it's a great business to have here in Adelaide. So if you're looking to either purchase a second-hand bike or sell one, I'd really, check out Recycle and have a chat to Lewis. And depending on where you are in the world, it might be worth, like if you hadn't thought about it before, checking out if your city, has been able to support a dedicated, store or business that's doing this type of work. Because it just can be a whole bunch better to sell your bike or buy a bike that way, as opposed to just dealing direct privately, which is maybe not as much fun as it can seem on the surface. All right, but excellent time I had with Lewis and Recycle. So great Adelaide business, and check it out if you are looking to do either buying or selling on the second-hand side. Alrighty, updates on the Silca strip chip. This has been a bit of a belter of a product launch for Silca and I guess the waxing space. So that has been fantastic. As you know from last week's video, I was quite curious as to whether or not this was going to be a product, I guess that a fairly focused niche was going to be interested in, or if it was going to be the product that a lot of people have been looking for to, get them onto their super low friction, immersive waxing path. So the fact that it's been, I think pretty much sold out within about a week is telling quite a good story on that front. There's been a few, information ins and outs with regards to the product, and it's something that I don't think, any media has been able to get all of it covered perfectly, including Silca Velo themselves. So Josh did a update video during the week, last week, which I'll do my best to remember to put a link to that video so that you can get basically a full 15 minutes from Josh covering the main questions that they have had come in. They've had about a bajillion inquiries and clarifications, I think, since the launch, and they've run through the main ones there. So I'll go through a couple that I think were not as accurate as could have been last week, just going off the information I had at the time. Right, first one, price. I was actually relatively close. I was on the Silca website last week and can never actually be 100% sure if the price it's telling me is in US dollars or Australian dollars. It seems like it does one or the other sometimes. Now that the product is loaded onto the Australian importer for Silca, which is Echelon Sports, I can see what the recommended retail price for Australia is going to be for the product. So for the strip chip, it is going to be $49.95. So it's pretty close, I guess, based on the US price. It was going to be maybe around the $60. So $49.95, we weren't too far out. We can see, so the fancy pot, I think I was relatively close on that as well. So we've got a retail price in Australia of $189.95 for the temp control pot and the fancy hanging stand that goes over the top. It does link to another question, which is, I guess, how many re-waxes from a bag of wax can or should one do? That simple question is probably about a 10-minute answer in itself to answer properly, because there's a fair bit of, let's say, differing advice from differing manufacturers on that. And then I have my own personal, I guess, advice and opinion, which goes somewhere in between a whole bunch of them. Silca, in the clarification video, they do mention sort of 70 to 80 re-waxes, which is, let's just say that's a lot more than any other manufacturer is saying you should do from your bag of wax. And in general, I don't think that you would physically get that many re-waxes from a bag of wax without it, just literally running out in your pot. At some point, you're going to need to, put more wax in. Generally speaking, my advice is that, because a small amount of contamination is going to be brought into the pot each time you do a re-wax, and that varies depending on if you're riding in dry road or wet or off-road, how much contamination you're bringing into your pot each re-wax, it's going to vary. So, but in general, by the time, so let's just take a stereotypical dry road cyclist as a quick one for today. If they're re-waxing at about 300 kilometers, I tend to recommend around about sort of 30 re-waxes. So that's around about 9,000 kilometers. General ballpark, I say, for most road cyclists to change to a fresh bag of wax, be it hot melt or be it M Speed wax or Rex Black Diamond, somewhere around that sort of 8,000 to 10,000 kilometer mark, which for most is about, say, a year, a good year of cycling. People can absolutely push things further, but that's just a general ballpark. And that when one does go to a fresh bag, it's a great time to, when you melt what's left of your bag of wax or MSW pucks, melt that down, decant that out into a small barbecue tray for disposal, wipe the pot clean with paper towel so you're getting rid of any of the contamination that's in the wax and settled down to the bottom. So your pot is now fresh and clean, ready for your fresh and clean bag of wax. I'll go in future into a bit deeper on, I guess, why are there such differences between what one manufacturer is saying versus another with regards to how many re-waxes per batch of wax from that particular company? And we'll also have a quick chat comparison as to what's happening with the contamination levels in your wax pot versus what would be happening if you were just adding more lubricant onto your chain, because still the advantage is going to be with the wax in the wax pot, even if you push things pretty long. But there's a crossover point as to, are you going to push wax treatments past a certain point to maximize your, mileage out of a bag of wax? But if that is increasing the wear rate now because that wax has started to become abrasive and less amazing than before, it's a false economy, because what you're saving in purchasing just a new bag of wax once a year, if that's abrading through your stuff now quicker than before, because it's more abrasive and your components are lovely components, it is just a way up that'll be worth having a proper chat. And I can run through some numbers a bit better in the future when I've got more time. All right, so bringing that back to what I think is, a likely scenario for the users and this product would be that somebody purchases a bag of hot melt, purchases a pack of strip chip, they merrily degrease their factory grease chain and set off on the super fun path of immersive waxing. Let's say they do 40 re-waxes and they've done 12,000 kilometers and now their chain is nearing 0.5% wear and they get a new chain. After that 40 re-waxes, their wax fill level will probably be down under 300 mil. Just want to clarify that it is okay to put another strip chip in that wax at that fill level and degrease a second chain. I expect the answer from Josh on that will be, yep, perfect, no problems at all. However, I can't see, I think, after 80, which he mentioned 70 to 80 in his video, I just don't see that anyone's going to, I guess, get to 80 waxings out of a bag of hot melt and look to put their, say, third strip chip into what would now be maybe 100 mil of wax, and that things, still be okay. And obviously, if somebody's just doing that with their pack of 6 strip chip, they're not going to get 6 through a bag of hot melt. So just going to be clarifying a couple of points there. We've sent that one off to Josh, and he can add it to his, no doubt, possibly still bajillion other clarification questions that are coming in after his update video. But I think we can probably safely say that whilst, yes, in theory, you can put all 6 strip chips through your bag of hot melt wax, that scenario is going to be really more likely to be okay if you were doing 6 chains fairly quickly after each other on a fairly new bag of hot melt wax. So yes, in theory, or let's say yes, officially, you can put all 6 through a bag of hot melt. However, I think in practicality, there will be a lot of real world cases where getting 6 strip chips through your bag of hot melt just simply won't go. And you're probably going to be looking at somewhere between 1 and 3, depending on when you're looking to do your next factory grease clean and how many re-waxings and what your fuel level is at that time. Hope that all made sense. All right, now let's have a quick chat about the pot and temperature. So just to clarify, the 125 degrees is only needed for the 10 minutes that you are doing your factory degreasing with your strip chip. After that you have done that degreasing with the strip chip, re-waxing is then as normal. So faffing around with a thermometer as opposed to buying an expensive pot may well be viable, because it's something that you only have to do that particular time you're doing a degrease. After that, just slow cooker on low as normal for a re-wax is going to be all fine and dandy. It may still be a fair bit of a faff though to get that temperature correct without a temperature control pot. So what do we think of the pot and the pricing and all that stuff? Now, some of you may already be aware that there was something like this out a little while ago from a groovy little company in Belgium called Silca. I've had a whole bunch of chats with Silca over the last few years, and I think they've been doing some really great stuff overall, and I think they're enjoying some good success, which is excellent to see. One of the things they did was they launched this starter kit, which had this lovely sort of custom pot there with the hanger system, and one could draw some parallels across to the Silca pot, and you would probably be very correct to draw that that parallel. So, I mean, just on the pricing side of things first, I can't see the price here, sorry, for the Silca one. I know that it was not that cheap, even if you were just to get the standalone pot, and it was not really viable to try to look at getting that from Australia when they're in Belgium, because the shipping on that pot was going to be fairly expensive. I've got one from them as a something that I've been testing over the last few years, but it's not something that was really viable for anyone here in Australia to sort of look at getting, unless there is an importer for Silca in Australia that's really bring them in en masse. We don't have, I guess, a good price comparison to benchmark the Silca one against. However, whilst the price of the Silca pot and stand, there's no way around it. It's not cheap. It's not out of this world when we're talking about temperature control pots. Yes, you can find cheap crap stuff that is temperature control from a whole bunch of sites that sell cheap crap stuff. However, if it's quality, you will pay for quality. So here's one of the cheaper, I guess, temp control pots that I've found that is an actual brand, Cambrook, not some spanker funkin' whatever from Temu. And, it's going to be the wrong size for a good fill level of wax, and you don't have a nice stand. So, pricing's not crazy, I don't think, for what you're getting. And for me, the Silca pot has made a couple of, I guess, small but important edits or updates to the Silca pot. So this I have fed back to Silca. The Silca, they sell their tablets in 200 grams, tablets as opposed to, say, a 500 gram bag of wax. Now I guess, and their pot is then made around that size. I have found the pot to be a little bit small. It fits a road chain in, no problems, or not really problems. You can get your road chain in there okay, and you don't have to get the looping of the chain here too exact. I have found though, once I'm sort of waxing some of my longer chains, so even a change from, say, if you've got a 106 link long road chain to but your mountain bike chain is 114 links long because that's got a big range cassette and a long cage mech, that chain just becomes a little bit of fun to actually get to fit in the pot. And then if you haven't got the looping really nicely correct, if you have, say, this loop a little bit short and then this loop a little bit longer, what would happen is when you hang the chain up with the longer chains is that they would actually hang down still into the wax in the wax pot. So that's not going to be amazing for it to hang to set, because it's going to set into the wax. So things like that. And if you had a really decently long chain or like a track chain, things like that, you're just going to have one heck of a time getting it in there. So the Silca pot being designed for basically a bag of wax or 500 ml as opposed to a 200 ml tablet just means you're going to be able to not have to faff with getting your loops correct and be able to hang it, and it's not going to hang into the pot. And you're also just going to be able to plonk it onto the pot and turn the pot on and come back when it's melted and swish it. As opposed to, I've found that when I would, say, put my mountain bike chain in to re-wax, I could pop it on top, turn the wax on to melt it, come back later to swish it, and a third of the chain is still sticking out of the wax. So that then needs to go. I need to faff to get that in, and then give it another 10 minutes or so for that section of the chain to heat up, the old coating melt off, and then I can come back again some other time later and swish it. So it was not always as sort of set and forget as what simply a larger pot would do. Also, designed for the Silca pot or the strip chip, is that the Silca pot goes up to that 125 that you need. This is a set temp of 95. So it is just going to be 95 always. So if you did need hotter, you can't go hotter. So yeah, the Silca pot, you're not going to be limited, I guess. If you did want to change to something else in the future that needed a high melting point, you've got the option. With this one, if you ended up sort of being not married to Cycler Wax for all of your waxing life and you wanted to try something that needed a higher melt point, then you're going to be a little bit stuck. So I hope Cycler Wax will make some updates at some point in the future, because this was a brilliant idea, so brilliant in fact that I think that this very clearly evolved from it. But now that someone has taken their idea and kind of run with a couple of updates, I'd like to see Cycler Wax, I guess, sort of move with the times and match those updates. Yes, in summary, it's obviously not a cheap purchase for waxing, but it is a lovely, I guess, purpose-built solution. So temp control, it's the right size for a bag of wax and easy waxing, and you get to hang it easily and nice and neatly directly over the pot without faffing with homemade solutions. And or if you're looking for something temp control because you're looking to do the strip chip degreasing, waxing as your path going forward, either a cheap, crappy, who knows what name brand pot from somewhere, or doing the whole thermometer thing and trying to juggle the temperature. So like everything, balance your own sort of budget and weigh up pros and cons on if it's worth it for you. But so far, judging on their sales, it seems to be worth it for a fair few. I mean, the Silca pot is not cheap either, even sort of factoring that we could get it to Australia for a not terrible shipping price. I think it's sort of somewhere around that similar mark for the setup in terms of the pot and the hanger and the swisher and so on. So they're kind of competitive on that side. Just the Silca's addressed a couple of improvement areas. Now, last bit that I'll address re-strip chip. On Josh's update video, one of the questions was, will the strip chip work with other brand waxes? The answer in short from Josh was kind of like, then they don't know. Obviously, they know what works with their wax because it's designed to work with their wax. They did mention, though, that I guess one brand that they said that it definitely would not work with because of the stated temperature on that brand's website was M Speed Wax. So I'll be chasing up with M Speed Wax. They do have, I guess, a temperature stipulation of, I think it's either 90 or 95 degrees Celsius, not to go above that or risk damaging the wax. So that's what Silca are running with as saying, look, don't use that brand because if you heat that up to 125, you may damage that wax. I'm going to check with M Speed Wax because I know that they, I guess, are generally fairly conservative and safe. They want their, customers of their product to have the best experience, so they don't want customers to be pushing temps and damaging wax. However, whether or not, in actuality, the base wax blend that M Speed Wax is using, how different, I guess, in terms of temperature range, is it from hot melt? So is it just a cautious guideline and that, yes, for 10 minutes at 125, M Speed Wax will in fact be fine or not? I will get that clarification hopefully for next week. Okay, testing time. I got to go through the comments on the week prize vid, where we put out the sort of the poll on which of the open tester we want to get to next, the 3-in-1, the Maxima, or the Juice Lubes. And the 3-in-1 had the most votes, so I will be queuing that up, hopefully starting this weekend. A bit behind. I was hoping I would get it cracking this week, but with Andrew away, I have been a little buried. So hopefully this weekend we will get that up and cranking. I've managed to get the machines reset because I had a mechanic friend come up and do all that for me. So the machine's ready to go. I've just got to get the chain prepped and test up and running. Finally got a spot on the machine to do the Take 2 retest of Ceramic Speed wet conditions lubricant. So that is ongoing now. However, I'm needing to have some chats. So we started talking with Ceramic Speed already with regards to how this test is going. I'm trying to get, I guess, more of an indication from Ceramic Speed what the, I guess, design brief or expected use case for this particular product is. Is it that they expect people will use this wet conditions lubricant of theirs only if it's, a wet ride? It's like this is designed for riding in wet conditions. So you prep your chain when you have a wet conditions ride coming up, and you go and ride in those wet conditions, and it's going to rock in those wet conditions. And after any harsh conditions ride like that, what you should be doing is resetting that chain to get all the contamination and crap out that the water will have brought in and get it re-prepped, ready for another wet day. Or is it expected that people are going to choose this lubricant as their daily training lubricant because days can come around that are wet and they want to be covered if that day coming up is going to be a wet day, or they're obviously out riding and it turns out to be wet? So, if it's the former, that could be a pretty narrow niche product because you can't always predict what ride day coming up is going to be a wet day, unless perhaps you live in Scotland, in which case it's like every day. But for a lot of countries, we don't, you're just not going to necessarily have a chain set aside, prepped for a wet conditions day, that's the chain you put on should that day turn out to be wet. Or if it's meant to be, I guess, a lubricant that people are using as their daily lube and training lube, so that they're covered if it turns out to be wet. If it's that, then we're having sort of some issues because I guess by the nature of this product being quite sticky, because it needs to stay stuck to the chain and not be washed off or abraded off. Hence, it's a wet conditions wax lube that's going to last through that harsh conditions ride. By its nature, it is gunking up sort of fairly quickly, fairly early into the test. So it's not something that, say, for instance, I personally would be happy with it, things looking visually like that as my daily lube. So there's a little bit of a questions to be asked around what its intended design brief is. And depending on what their answer is on what that design brief is will, I guess, determine whether or not this test is either A, suitable, or B, how suitable it is to suit that brief. And last bit today, I'll cover off, I can't even remember what I mentioned last week with regards to the stripper and Ceramic Speed drivetrain clean test. I guess, change in plan. So and I've had some good input as well from some comments on last week's video. But yeah, the overall plan will be to look to get like some type of swab with a detection agent for grease and oil, so that we will get a very clear and visual outcome as to how many chains the fancy chain prep products can clean off, before it's starting to leave some grease and oil behind. Just been a little bit, time pressed to delve into Google and find out what I need to purchase to get that done. If somebody does know what are, the detection agents for oil and grease and where I can get them easily in Australia, let me know. That'll save me faffing around with Google to try and find the right supplier or the right product. And obviously, time is going to be important in the next few months. There's another test, I guess, in a similar vein that I want to get up and going as soon as I can. Once sort of Andrew's back and I'm not buried. This has been a bit overdue as well with regards to wax drip lubricant set times. So there are, I guess, varying claims from varying manufacturers and products of wax drip lubricants out there as to how long they need to set before they are properly set for your riding. This can be really important sometimes, especially if you're applying, say, perhaps relatively late the night before a ride the next day, and especially if that next day's ride is going to be harsh conditions or wet. If the wax emulsion or wax drip lubricant hasn't properly set, they can be very easily washed out, in wet conditions cycling. There are sort of needed set time claims that range from sort of 12 hours to 24 hours to as little as 10 minutes. And so I'd like to actually put a whole bunch of the main products, from Squirt to the True Tension, Silca SS Drip, UFO Drip, Smooth, all that sort of stuff. Would love to properly assess what their set times are. I have seen a place, it was a while ago, they did a bunch of their own testing where they were putting some drops of the wax drip lubricants onto a glass plate. They had a extremely precise sort of, literally sort of micromillimeter perfect scraping device that would then spread that drop in a very thin film across the glass surface. They would be given then a particular amount of set time, and then that would be run underwater and see if it washed off. And some products fared, really, I guess, overall pretty well, and some would be washed off quite quickly. Some of the products that washed off quite quickly had actually performed fairly well in the zero friction cycling test through block 4. So my concern with that type of test methodology is that, how wax bonds to a glass plate may be quite different as to how the wax lubricants bond to chain metal surface, which is quite different to a glass plate. And that sort of may not have been very representative. Again, with a lot of testing, the more realistic it is to the actual use case, the better. Hence why it's typically better to test lubricants on a bicycle chain, on a bicycle drivetrain, if that's its intended purpose, as opposed to doing a pin-on disc test or like a Phalanx or Brugger test or a 4-ball test. Things that we're assessing the lubricant in a I guess a particular situation that it's not actually going to be used in the purposes that we're looking at. So how much validity is there in those test results? So I want to get to a test of the set times of the lubricants, and again, it's going to be a similar thing. We do need to do it onto the actual chain metal, so we need to take some chain links apart, apply the lubricant to the inside of some chain links, allow X set time, and then we need, I guess, not a very subjective. We want something that's going to be fairly definitive to assess whether or not that lubricant has then set on that chain metal. So that part I need to try to have a bit more time to look into. And it may be, again, one of those things where we try one or two particular paths, see how that works. And if it's, not tangibly assessing what we want it to assess, then we'll keep improving on that until we find the test method that tells us really what we do want to know. So it'd be great over time to get the actual set times of the wax strip lubricants. Part of that will be as well, again, to keep it realistic, if I apply a drop of wax strip lubricant to say an inner link plate that's exposed to open air, that is not representative of the air exposure that it will receive when the wax strip is inside a chain. So there's probably going to have to be a couple of parts to the test. One would be on the open link. We'll get a baseline of that, and then we need to apply them to, I guess, section of chain as per manufacturer instructions, take the chain apart, and then after X time, and see how the product has set there. So it'd be a little bit of an interesting one to get cracking on, but I'd like to get it done, and I think it'll be quite interesting to really nail down the wax strip set times versus the claims. And you just have, if you're using a particular product and you've got to ride the next day, when are you safe to I guess, or what's your cutoff time that you should have applied that product to be all good? My apologies, I know that was a bit rambly, badly worded, but I'm out of time to try to re-record that. I'll have to wrap up here. So thank you, everybody. Hope enjoyed the low friction update news. Don't even have time today to work on clearing my name from that very nasty person doing that stuff. I'll see if I get time to do some at the end of next week, because clearing my name is important to me, and we do have other stuff on other channels, or I guess other avenues, that we'll be looking to do that at a deeper level. There were a couple of bits I wanted to sort of try to get to today, but I must plow on, or orders will not get out, and that will not be good, because the low frictionness must get to people to have low friction riding. All right, thanks everybody. Have a great weekend of cycling, and I will catch you next week. I'll do my best to be on top of comments, but I may be a bit behind or a bit slower than normal, because things are fairly entertaining at the moment. Alrighty, till next time. Bye.